So, have you forgiven me for making you watch this garbage?
No. No, I haven't. No, I won't. I don't plan on doing it. And it is going to take a lot of Christian patience and reconciliation and humility to ever forgive you. This was the worst Oscars ever.
It seemed intolerable. I mean, I kept, going in and turning it on just so I could feel your pain, because your pain makes me happy. So,
that's right. It was a little treat for you. You get to go in there.
And it was appalling. Yeah.
It was the most boring Oscars ever.
Yeah.
Jimmy Kimmel made history in that his opening monologue had basically no jokes at all. Do you remember the old days? Billy Crystal would do a whole montage, and he would make jokes about the movies, and he would insert himself into the movies, and it was about the movies, right? This was not. We knew going in this was all about politics. So Jimmy Kimmel, he actually admitted in the opening, he said, look, these speeches are for changing the world. They're a great platform for pushing leftist politics, basically.
Yeah.
We need to keep them a little shorter because it's a 4-hour telecast, but you've got to say what you've got to say.
And Marlon Brando, who was one of the first people to do this, it used to be considered rude. I mean, the New York Times would just say it's rude to go up while people are celebrating and put forward your controversial opinion, which offends the audience that you're trying to please.
It's just so ungrateful. But they knew this going in. And it does say something about the culture. The culture is obsessed with politics now. And I don't know if that's symptom or if that's cause, but everything was about politics. So even the jokes, they weren't even clever. They were just this low-hanging fruit. So Jimmy Kimmel made a joke about how Trump is a racist. Tee-hee-hee, right? We've never heard that one before. Wow, great. And he made a joke about how Mike Pence was made uncomfortable by that movie about pederasty. As though we shouldn't be uncomfortable with it.
And like Mike Pence could give a rat's whether they make that movie or not.
It's like, right, of course. He, like America, certainly didn't see it.
He didn't see it. I have to just say one thing. I was talking about the difference between right-wing culture, which is open-minded, hilarious, we're always laughing and arguing and all this stuff, and left-wing culture, which is furious. The funny thing was that Donald Trump went to that press dinner the other night. He was funnier than Kimmel. He was making jokes. He made a joke where he said, he said to the New York Times, "I'm glad you're here. You're a New York icon. I'm a New York icon too. And the only difference is I still own my buildings." I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good material, And Kimmel is sitting there doing garbage, basically.
It's a low bar. Kimmel hasn't been funny since the 90s.
Right.
I think there was a joke on Family Guy about how they were going to tune in every night and watch Jimmy Kimmel try. He isn't a great talent, but he's a really just debased. He made a couple of pot jokes, right? Those were the funniest jokes he made all night, were about Steven Spielberg having pot on him. And it's just that is the highest form of humor that this guy is capable of. And it's really sad because there were a couple decent speeches. Sam Rockwell, who deserved his award in a category of great performances, he gave a nice speech. It was fun, it was modern, it wasn't some great eloquent thing, but it was just gracious, and he said thank you. Gary Oldman comes out and thanks America for giving him opportunities, Winston Churchill for his greatness, and his mother and the Academy, and he left. Now, mercifully though, because we had to reverse it. So it used to be Best Actor was the last, it came after Best Actress. Now they flipped it because Me Too, hashtag Me Too. And so then Frances McDormand came out and shrieked about feminism and how actresses who make millions of dollars should make even more money. No gratitude whatsoever.
Have they looked outside that theater at the homeless tents that are like, that our own Emily was like involved in a murder? Not, she wasn't involved in it, but she was close to a murder.
She was skating on the blood as she was going to get her morning coffee.
Come on, and the problem in Hollywood is that $1 million actresses are not being paid $2 million. That's what they think victimhood looks like.
They have no sense. They've lost the sense of what the movies are for, what the art form is. It's because it's dead. It is just a totally dead art form. And we see it. This was the intersectional Oscars, I think. The Best Picture award, as you said, went to the intersectional movie, where the disabled woman, the black woman, the gay guy, the fish, South American fish man, those were all the
South
good
American fishmen have it tough. Now let's not be actual bigots here. We have to be polite to South American fish people.
They're just dreamers, really. They're just little dreaming fishes, and they're all the bad guys, or they're all the good guys, and the only bad guys are the straight white male. Americans who like their country. Those are all the bad guys, played beautifully by Nick Searcy.
Of course, the great Nick Searcy, who's in like every Oscar-nominated film.
That's right. So it was so intersectional in that way, and that's why you had this person, Common, who went up and he did the death of art. He did slam poetry, and it didn't make any sense. It said, we talked about feminism, then it said the NRA is not God's way, and then he had all of these activists One of whom was Cecile Richards, who's killed 3.8 million babies in just 12 years. And then next to her was the founder of Black Lives Matter. Even though Cecile Richards has killed, what, like 2.5 million black babies in 12 years?
Yeah, but she didn't use a gun. Let's be.
That's true. At least she didn't use a gun.
She tortures them first. Yeah.
It was pure intersectionality, and it's why it was so boring. Is because you can't make jokes anymore. Everything is so self-flagellating and timid and sad. Jimmy Kimmel, the most honest line of the night, he said, "I wish I were a woman." I'm sure you do, Jimmy.
He's close.
And now you can be.
He's almost there. I mean,
that's right. Yeah, he's on. It was really just very sad, and it showed us that this is the logical conclusion of PC. This is the logical conclusion of intersectionality, is this hateful, angry, tedious, boring ranting, rather than some light entertainment, rather than what the Oscars were even 10 years ago.
Well, intersectionality, I mean, I was talking about that, the difference between Get Out and The Godfather, in which assimilation is the goal in The Godfather, where assimilation is the evil in Get Out, and intersectionality is the opposite of the melting pot. It is the opposite of the assimilation dream, which comes, it comes along with problems. It comes along, Michael Corleone has problems. He doesn't get to assimilate.
Right.
But that's the tragedy. Where in Get Out, the tragedy, the horror, is if you do assimilate, you lose your essential blackness. And I think that intersectionality is, in fact, the anti-melting pot, anti-e pluribus unum, anti-American. They finally have perfected the anti-American philosophy. And of course it makes you angry.
Of course, and these films, the films that they honored last night, the ones that really won, they did present a vision of the world as the left sees it. I really liked Three Billboards. I thought it was pretty, the acting was spectacular. Yeah. But just as with all of McDonough's work, it has good internal logic and internal consistency, but it presents the world as lefties see it, which isn't true. It isn't the world that we really live in.
Right.
And the one film that I think did sort of get to it a little bit was Lady Bird, and they got nothing. They walked away with nothing.
They walked away, I know, ultimately. And, I was glad they gave it to Gary Oldman. He's one of the few, I don't think he likes to talk about it, but I think he is a little bit closer to our side than some.
It sure looks like it.
Yeah, he is, I'm sure. But I do think that they are completely divorced now from the public they came to serve. And again, a lot of this has to do with the Jews who built, the Jewish white men who built Hollywood were desperate to become part of America. All they wanted was to please Americans with their product, but also they preach. You go back and look, they preach a little bit. Like, oh yes, we accept people. After the war, certainly they started talking about the anti-Semitism in America. All they wanted though was to be part of America. America was the good, whereas now they're telling us that America is the bad. And the other thing about this is I really believe, and actually most women that I know agree with me. I mean, most women I know are not feminists because the feminists won't talk to me. But I believe that young men are always where the future is. So if young men are killing themselves or playing video games 12 hours a day, that's where the future is going to go. But where do you think, are young men going to sit around and be kicked in the crotch forever? Are they going to sit around and be hated for being men forever? Are they going to sit around and be hated for being white? After all, women should be welcome in Hollywood, but they didn't build Hollywood. Women should be welcome in Silicon Valley, but they didn't build Silicon Valley. And whatever is being built now that we can't see, that is in the future, is probably going to be built by a bunch of guys who are being derided by Jimmy Kimmel.
That's right. That's right. It is just a sign of the death of Hollywood. That self-flagellation, and nobody's going to watch it. I got the movie card, so I now go see 700 movies a day because I like a good deal.
Yeah.
But I think I'm the only person in America who saw Phantom Thread. Nobody saw that at all. And that divorce of the popular culture from what Hollywood is churning out just shows it is the death of it. And we're not going to watch. I think I'm the only young man in the country who watched the Oscars last night. I think that's almost without question.
And you only did it under duress.
And I only did it under absolute duress. But it's so sad. It's so sickly. Why do we have to watch Jimmy Kimmel say, "Oh, I wish I were a woman"? Aren't we? We're so bad, aren't we? Ouch! Yeah, hit me, mama. Yeah. There's something very perverse about that.
There is something perverse. And when you think back, I always talk about the fact that like art forms and civilizations and everything follow the pattern of a human life. You know, you have this youth where you do these spectacular things, and then you have the wisdom of middle age, and then you kind of decline. And you know, I think that is what we're looking at. We're looking at this art form in decline, and it's just, you know, why, you know, in 1939, which was the peak of the movie industry, the golden age of Hollywood, the films that were nominated, The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, were not only classics, they were the top box office films. Even if these films are good, and some of them are good. I mean, I did like Get Out. It was a tiny little film, but I liked it.
So did I, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, even if they're good, like people are not seeing these movies. They're not speaking to America. They have lost their grip on America. So they think they're winning the culture war because they agree with themselves.
And they're small and they're thin. I agree entirely. I really liked Get Out. It was at least original. It was at least fun and did something. And it was kind of made us some interesting points.
Held together,
the one point being that white liberals are the most racist people on earth, a point I've long advocated. But it was a small movie. It was Shape of Water was a thin movie. It was a shallow movie.
I thought it was totally empty, yeah.
You know, at least Dunkirk, for all of its flaws, it was a movie. It did present something closer to what a movie is.
Sure.
But what was the last big movie? What was the last major movie? It seems to me they've been shrinking ever since 1939, and really certainly since the 70s.
It really is true. The last big one that mattered that I could think of is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I thought Logan was a really good movie, but I didn't think it was a great movie. I just thought it was a really interesting, different take on superheroes.
At least it had stakes. Unlike every other superhero movie. It had something. And it's funny because now I come in, I said, oh gosh, Lady Bird was great. Oh gosh, Logan was great. But really, they weren't great.
That's right.
They were compared to the other movies this year, they were great.
Yeah.
But really, in the grand scheme of things, they were good. They were quite good, you know.
Exactly. All right, well, you going to talk about this more in your show?
No, not at all. No more Oscars, man. You can't do this to me anymore. All right, no more. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about this vote in South Africa to steal all the white people's farmland.
Oh, yeah, I heard about this.
Nobody's covering it because it's a little touchy, it's a little racy, we can't go there. So, of course, we're going to bring Lauren Southern on. She's done a documentary about farmlands in Africa, and we're going to talk to her about what this means for the future, if South Africa is going the way of Zimbabwe, and if Nelson Mandela's dream is finally dead as the left hollows out every other good thing that we have in the world.
Well, I'm glad you're moving on because the Oscars are kind of the peak of my year because to sit there watching them, knowing you're watching them, it's you know.
I hope you enjoyed that martini. I hope you seasoned it with both a nice olive and a couple of my tears.
And your tears. All right, good. The Michael Knowles show coming up. Thanks a lot, Knowles. That was cruel. I probably shouldn't.